True strength not found in comfort is forged in chaos. A man of the storm does not run from hardship. He walks into it. He doesn't pray for the storm to stop. He prepares himself to endure it. The enemy is not outside. It is the fear within. And until you face that fear, it will rule you. Let's talk honestly about what it means to face the storm. Not in a poetic sense, but in the truest psychological and existential reality. You see, every person alive will, at some point, be met with chaos. It's not a matter of if, it's when. Tragedy, loss, failure, betrayal, sickness, storms of life are inevitable. But here's the difference. Some people run. They numb themselves with distractions. They lie to themselves. They curl inward and wait for the world to fix itself. And others rise. They face the wind. They stare directly into the unknown. They decide consciously that the storm will not define them, but refine them. Now, let's not be naive. The storm is real. It hurts. It shakes your foundations. It can take your breath away. But here's the key idea. Running from the storm doesn't keep you safe. It makes you weaker. Every time you avoid a necessary confrontation, whether it's with a difficult truth, a painful past, or an inner wound, you sacrifice strength. And strength is precisely what you need if you want to grow, if you want to matter, if you want to live with meaning. Carl Jung once said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." What does that mean? It means that the depth of your potential is tied to your willingness to confront the darkest parts of yourself and your life. The man of the storm doesn't pretend things are fine when they aren't. He doesn't plaster a fake smile over despair. He walks into the pain with open eyes. He's willing to be undone because he knows only what is real can be rebuilt. Think of the biblical story of Jonah. He runs from his purpose. The storm comes, not because the world hates him, but because he's avoiding who he's meant to be. Only when he stops running and surrenders to the chaos does he find transformation. That's not just a story, it's a psychological blueprint. You can't outrun your soul, and the longer you try, the louder the storm becomes until it consumes you. So what does it mean, practically, to face the storm? It means telling the truth, especially when it's hard. It means setting boundaries when people cross lines. It means taking responsibility for your life instead of blaming everyone else. It means looking at your failures and asking, what do I need to become so this never breaks me again? And then doing that work relentlessly, humbly, courageously. And the strange thing is, once you face the storm, once you go through it, something miraculous happens. You're no longer afraid of it. You become solid, rooted. Other people sense it in you. They trust you. Why? Because you've been tested and you didn't collapse. You've walked through fire and now you're a source of warmth for others. But there's a warning here too. Some people get addicted to the storm. They create chaos to feel alive. That's not courage. That's self-destruction. The man of the storm isn't seeking chaos. He simply refuses to be ruled by it. He enters it when he must. And when he emerges, he brings order, wisdom, leadership, peace, because that's what the storm trained him to do. If you want to be that man, it starts with a decision, a quiet, honest commitment to stop running, to stop waiting for life to get easier, to stop blaming circumstances, and instead to become the kind of person who rises when most fall, who speaks when most are silent, who stands even when the ground is shaking beneath his feet. Let me leave you with this thought. You were not born to avoid the storm. You were born to walk through it and become something more because of it. So the next time life pushes you to the edge, don't ask for rescue. Ask for strength. Face it, feel it, and rise anyway. Because that's what it means to be the man of the storm. You cannot be strong unless you've been broken. And not just once, again and again. The storm will try to tear you apart. But that pain, that is the furnace where your character is burned, reshaped, and solidified. And the man of the storm learns to respect his suffering because he knows it is the price of becoming whole. If you want to be the man of the storm, you have to understand that discipline is not a luxury. It's not something you turn on when you feel like it. It's the framework, the inner architecture that keeps you upright when the winds of life try to tear you down. You see, most people confuse discipline with restriction. They think it's about limiting freedom. But psychologically, it's the opposite. Discipline is what creates the foundation upon which meaningful freedom is built. Without it, you're a slave to impulse, to chaos, to emotion, to weakness. Now, this is the moment where many stop paying attention because we live in a culture that deeply values comfort and often avoids discomfort at all costs. People desire results, strength, success, meaning, but shy away from the process it demands. They wish for growth without struggle, for purpose without sacrifice. Yet, the reality is different. True transformation requires enduring discomfort. Discipline is the conscious and deliberate acceptance of that discomfort, chosen as a pathway to growth. It is the daily commitment to not be ruled by the weaker, easier parts of ourselves. From a psychological perspective, discipline is the intentional engagement with the part of us that resists change and growth. That voice urging, rest a little longer. Skip the effort. Delay the difficult conversations. Avoid responsibility isn't offering genuine care. It's offering temporary relief disguised as kindness. If we heed that voice too often, we risk losing connection with who we truly are. Day by day, decision by decision, we drift further from our potential and the person we hope to become. Athlete discipline is the remedy. It is the choice, repeated every day, to respond differently to that voice. It is not about a one-time victory, but a consistent pattern of commitment. Excellence is not born from fleeting inspiration. It is forged in the steady rhythm of effort. In the ordinary moments when no one is watching, especially when the path is challenging. Consider discipline like a muscle of the will. Just like physical muscles, it grows stronger when exercised. Every promise you keep to yourself, no matter how small, reinforces your integrity. Conversely, each unkept promise diminishes your self-trust. This is more than practical advice. It touches the core of our identity. If we cannot trust ourselves to act in alignment with our values, then who are we really? Now, there's an even deeper truth. Discipline creates the foundation for meaning. Meaning is what sustains us when we face hardship. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of unimaginable suffering, taught that suffering ceases to be suffering when it gains meaning. Yet, meaning doesn't appear by chance. It is cultivated through intentional effort, through bringing order to chaos, and contributing beyond ourselves. This cultivation requires discipline. It is the work of transforming disorder into purpose. When I speak of being the man of the storm, I'm not describing someone untouched by life's challenges. Rather, I mean the person who has spent years preparing quietly through habits and restraint so that when difficulty arises, he does not falter. He is ready. His inner foundation is firm enough to withstand external pressure. Apparently, this idea applies broadly to our relationships, careers, health, and spiritual lives. Wherever there is value, discipline. Only those willing to meet that challenge step by step gain what lies beyond. So here's the challenge. Don't wait for motivation or clarity. Those are not prerequisites for beginning. What you need is commitment. a decision to grow into a better version of yourself through intentional action, not luck or ease. In the final analysis, it's not talent or fortune that determines who endures life's storms, but discipline. Now, remember this. If you don't take charge of yourself, external forces will take charge for you. If you don't develop your habits will shape you. Building discipline is essential because in many ways, it shapes your very survival. In the midst of chaos, the world outside is unstable. The way to stay grounded is through inner discipline. Values, purpose, and structure become anchors. Without discipline, we drift aimlessly. But the man of the storm understands that true freedom isn't doing whatever feels easy. It's having the strength to do what must be done. Delhi, storms are not interruptions to life. They are life itself. Challenges are not detours, but the path forward. And the person who learns to face adversity with resilience, not by avoiding pain, but by finding strength within it, becomes unshakable. He doesn't wait for the world to soften. He becomes stronger than the difficulties he faces. Adversity is not the enemy. In fact, it might be your greatest teacher. We often think of pressure and pain as things to be eliminated, but philosophically and psychologically, that's a dangerous way to live because life will pressure you. It will squeeze you, break you open, and show you what's really inside. And if you haven't cultivated resilience, if you haven't accepted hardship as a necessary component of growth, then every storm will seem like proof that you're failing instead of an invitation to rise. There's a reason why some people crumble under pressure while others transform. It's not random. It comes down to meaning and mindset. People who endure, who evolve through suffering, have learned to reinterpret pain, not as punishment, but as fuel. They don't ask, why is this happening to me? They ask, what is this here to teach me? That shift in orientation is not just motivational fluff. It's the core of psychological transformation. It moves you from victim to warrior, from passive to powerful. You see, resilience is not about brute toughness. It's not about pretending you're unaffected or suppressing emotion. It's about developing a structure that allows you to stay oriented in the storm, to still act with purpose, to still choose integrity, even when everything in you wants to give up. And that kind of structure is built over time through friction. You gain resilience the same way you gain muscle, by lifting what is heavy, by engaging with what hurts, by staying in the fire longer than you thought you could. This is where emotional honesty becomes crucial. You can't become resilient by lying to yourself. You have to look your pain in the face, name it, understand it, and decide that it will not define you. That's what separates the man of the storm from the man who's destroyed by it. He doesn't pretend he's not hurting. He simply decides that the pain will be used, not wasted. There's a kind of nobility in this, a quiet strength that doesn't always look impressive from the outside, but internally, it's everything. Because once you realize that pain doesn't have to break you, it can actually build you. You stop fearing it. And the moment you stop fearing adversity, you become a different kind of human, not immune to pain, but empowered by it. Not invincible, but intentional. And what happens then is profound. You start to walk toward challenge instead of away from it. You begin to see that the struggle itself is shaping you into someone capable of carrying greater responsibility, deeper meaning, and more authentic power. You stop begging for the storm to end, and you start asking, what kind of man do I need to become to walk through this with my head high? That's the core of this mindset. You don't pray for easier roads, you pray for stronger legs. You don't curse the thunder, you learn to hear your own voice louder in it, because life will not accommodate your comfort. It will test your structure, and the only way to meet that test with dignity is to become the structure. So when the storm comes, again, it will. Don't run. Don't hide. Don't numb yourself with distractions and addictions and excuses. Stand up. Feel the weight. Let it shape you. Let it refine you. Let it call out the deepest part of who you are, because that part, the one that endures, the one that adapts, the one that refuses to quit, that's the part of you that was born to win. And if you can meet life on those terms, not only will you survive the storm, you will become it. A storm will always threaten those you love. And if you're not strong enough, they'll suffer too. The man of the storm is not just a warrior. He is a protector. He remains calm when others panic. He speaks truth when others lie. He stands firm when others collapse, because he knows his presence gives others the courage to stand too. There's something deeply powerful, almost sacred, about the decision to keep moving forward when everything in your life is trying to pull you under. Most people underestimate just how significant that act is. Not because it looks heroic on the outside, but because of what it requires on the inside. Discipline, clarity, and a kind of inner sovereignty that refuses to be dictated by chaos. To be the man of the storm, you must learn not just to endure the wind, but to walk with direction within it. It's a psychological truth that when you're overwhelmed by stress, by failure, by loss, the first thing that often disappears is structure. You stop doing the small things that once anchored you. You sleep in. You eat poorly. You neglect routines. You pull away from responsibilities. Why? Because those things feel meaningless when the emotional weight of your life becomes too heavy. But that's precisely when you need structure the most. Because in the absence of structure, chaos doesn't just surround you, it consumes you. And this is where we often get it wrong. We think discipline is about control, about denying ourselves pleasure or freedom. But discipline, real discipline, is about alignment. It's the act of saying, I'm going to act in accordance with who I want to become, not how I feel in the moment. That's not restriction. That's freedom, because it's freedom from being a slave to every passing emotion. It's freedom to create a life grounded in meaning rather than reaction. One of the core philosophical insights here is this. In the face of suffering, your ability to remain structured becomes your rebellion against despair. It's your proof that you're not defeated, even if you're wounded. That's not just psychology, spiritual resistance. When everything inside you is fractured, and yet you still wake up, still clean your room, still show up where you're needed. That is the essence of what it means to be the man of the storm. But let's not pretend it's easy. There will be days when you'll want to quit, days when routine feels like a joke, and goals feel irrelevant. You'll be tempted to sink, to regress, to distract yourself with short-term comfort instead of staying the course. And that's where discipline becomes more than just a habit. It becomes an identity. It says, this is what I do. This is who I am. I do the hard thing not because it feels good, but because it's necessary. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. In fact, the most disciplined people are often the most emotionally intelligent because they don't let emotion dominate. They integrate it. They feel their pain, they acknowledge it, but they don't let it derail their path. They make space for their suffering without letting it dictate their choices. And that's a subtle but profound distinction, one that separates those who survive the storm from those who are transformed by it. Think about the heroes you admire, not the fictional ones, but the real ones, the people who've walked through hell and somehow come out more whole, more honest, more useful to the world. What do they all share? A structure, a discipline, a commitment to order, even in the face of deep internal chaos. They didn't float through pain. They built a vessel strong enough to carry them across it. And that vessel was built plank by plank. Wake up on time, train your body, speak the truth, organize your space, do the work, even when you don't feel like it. It sounds simple, but simple is not the same as easy. It's hard. And that's why most people don't do it. But if you do, if you commit to that kind of integrity, you don't just survive the storm, you rise above it. You become someone who can lead others through it. So when life breaks you down, and it will Remember this, structure is not a cage. It's scaffolding. It's how you rebuild yourself when everything feels like it's falling apart. You don't wait for clarity. You create it. You don't wait for the storm to end. You become the man who can walk through it, unchanged in essence, but refined in strength. Because when discipline becomes your foundation, no storm can take from you what truly matters. Sometimes you are not just meant to endure the storm. Sometimes you are meant to become it. There are moments in life where silence is surrender, where compliance is cowardice. The man of the storm knows when to be still and when to rise like thunder, not to destroy, but to awaken. But purpose-driven strength is unstoppable. It's one thing to talk about strength, about resilience, about the courage to stand in the storm, but none of that has enduring meaning unless it leads somewhere higher. To be the man of the storm is not merely about enduring suffering. It's about transforming it, turning pain into purpose, turning chaos into wisdom, and perhaps most importantly, turning your scars into something sacred. Not something to hide, but something to offer. That's what gives the suffering its redemptive quality. That's what elevates it from meaningless trauma to meaningful sacrifice. And it's this idea, the transformation of wounds into wisdom, that we often miss in our culture. We treat suffering as something to avoid, to numb, to bury beneath distraction. But there's a deep philosophical error in that approach. Because if you run from pain, you run from growth. You cannot become strong without resistance. You cannot become wise without failure. And you certainly cannot become whole by pretending you're not broken. It's in the encounter with your deepest wounds that the potential for transcendence is born. Now, this is not to glorify suffering. Pain by itself doesn't make you better. In fact, pain can destroy you if it's aimless, if it's endured passively, if it's allowed to rot in the shadows. But pain that is confronted, examined, carried with intention, that kind of pain becomes fuel. It sharpens you. It deepens your vision. It builds compassion. And maybe that's the most radical insight here. Your suffering, if rightly approached, doesn't just make you stronger, it makes you more useful to others. And that's where the real transformation begins. When you stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? When you take your hardship and make it a reason to serve, to teach, to protect, to lead. The most admirable people I know, men and women who move the world forward, are not those who avoided hardship. They're the ones who walked through fire and emerged with something to give. Not bitterness, not resentment, but depth, clarity, a capacity to bear the load, not just for themselves, but for others. This is the archetypal hero's journey found in every great story. The individual descends into the unknown, confronts the dragon, whatever form that dragon may take, loss, trauma, fear, humiliation, and instead of fleeing or being consumed, they face it. And in doing so, they don't just return the same. They return with treasure, insight, a gift. And their role shifts from survivor to guide, from victim to leader. That's the path you must be willing to walk, to take your pain and turn it into a mission. Not because it's easy, but because it's meaningful. And meaning is what stabilizes the soul in the storm. Meaning is what allows you to suffer without falling apart. Because when you believe that your suffering matters, when you know that it can help, it stops being a prison and starts becoming a path. This is a heavy responsibility, but it is also liberating. Because once you realize that your pain has value, not just for you, but for the world, you stop hiding from it. You start using it, you don't waste it. And in that moment, you become something very rare in this world, a person who is not just surviving the chaos, but transforming it into light for others to follow. So the challenge is this: don't let your suffering go unused. Don't let it decay into despair. Take it, face it, learn from it, and then give it back as strength, as truth, as an example. There's someone out there who needs what your pain has taught you. Maybe it's your family. Maybe it's your community. Maybe it's someone you haven't even met yet. But your responsibility is the same. Rise, not just for yourself, but for them. Because the man of the storm isn't defined by the darkness he's faced, but by how he turns that darkness into light.